link, and I saw the funniest quote that said, and let's see if you can, let's make it a trivia question here. Can you tell me what Eisner-nominated writer used the phrase, Marxism is the most profoundest? I don't want to hear myself repeat.
Sorry, I went to the channel so that I could see the chat and didn't realize I still had the sound on.
I thought it was me.
My bad. I'm sorry. What was the question?
The trivia question is, can you tell me what Eisner-nominated comics writer used the phrase that Marxism is the most profoundest expression?
Mags Visaggio?
They got it right the first time, man. I read that. I'm like, okay, this is why editors are important.
Yeah. I think I saw her tweeting about that. Somebody posting her tweeting about it a couple of days ago or something.
Yeah, I just saw it a few minutes ago. I couldn't. I was like, okay, fine. We all make mistweets, but that was pretty. That was the most profoundest mistweet I've ever seen. And I had some notes too I want to bring up for a little bit later here, but we got one person in. I'm trying to get the rest of the crew going. So I watched you doing some inking today. You use a lot of the Photoshop when you work, or is that?
I use Clip Studio Paint. Yeah, it's personally I think it's a lot better than Photoshop, because what I usually say is that Photoshop is a program specifically created to alter photographs. You know, so great for coloring. Good for
not
coloring.
Really made for drawing in. It's not an art tool.
Yeah, it's like it's a photo. Excuse me. It's a photo editing app that allows you to change colors that people have hacked to be able to draw pages. Whereas Clip Studio Paint is Photoshop designed for drawing comics. So I like using a program that was built for the specific task that it's meant for.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I was doing the tiniest bit of research on your history, just to make it look like I was doing my job here. And you're one of the few Comicsgate people doing comics and IGGs who have already done comics for the big boys. You did some stuff for Image. What drove you to Comicsgate?
Well, I was kind of pushed into it, really.
We all were.
For years I've been like talking to my buddy Andrew, who we're at the name drop, about the state of comics industry, and we've had these opinions on it for a while, and I didn't even like Comicsgate was in my peripherals, until it got so big that I was like, okay, what is this about? And then I started researching it, listening to some of the videos for about 6 months, and finally I was like, I watched this guy's videos, and I don't think he's a misogynist or a transphobe or a sexist or racist or any of that crap. I mean, no, he doesn't have the greatest opinions in the world. I don't agree with him on everything, but he's not Hitler.
Yeah,
and
people are.
And that like set off a tidal wave of disappointment and angered a lot of SJWs in comics who really didn't appreciate that I wasn't 100%, supportive and saying, no, he is Hitler. Okay, he's a guy with opinions. He's a guy with a beef with one trans person that he misgenders, but he still uses proper pronouns and blah, blah, blah. And it's just ridiculous. It was like a ridiculous it was like false offense. They wanted somebody to blame
the outrage machine.
Yeah, they wanted somebody to blame for their crappy comics. Like, he was calling them out on it, and people were taking notice, and they needed somebody to blame.
That's pretty much how I took sides. I mean, I kept hearing about this guy who was so offensive and awful. I'm like, well, okay, let me go hear what the Andrew Dice Clay of comics has to say about comics. And from the very first time I listened to it, it's like, he's making some points here, and yeah, sometimes he's going over the top, but good God, he's not he's not Satan incarnate here, because I've seen people who come a lot closer to that, and they work in the professional industry. So we don't make a lot of friends choosing this side.
No, not really. That's all right.
We do make her good. Care. I'm still waiting to go to a convention wearing.
Sure. That's a good one. But yeah,
anybody watching this later, we got it in our TeePublic store. I'll link it.
He like, I started agreeing with a lot of his opinions on comics. Like, I didn't 100% agree with everything he said, but a lot of the things he was saying, I was going, yeah, I feel that same way. Like, yeah, that's really what's happening. I said, I didn't notice it, but now that he mentioned that, yeah, I can see that.
And did expressing that opinion cost you anything?
Oh yeah, it cost me a job in comics. I was pretty much blacklisted the moment that went out, and people started swarming on me, telling me that I was wrong. But yeah, that ended my excuse me, just getting over a cold.
That's okay. Somebody's made a career out of coughing in videos. He's doing okay.
Yeah, but it pretty much ended my quote unquote budding career in comics. But I'm doing quite all right.
Yeah. Were you on anything at the time, on any title that got canceled, or were you just kind of waiting for the next job and found out it wasn't going to come?
I was working with Justin Jordan on the next pitch. We had sent one out to Image Comics. It was going to be a fun book, a fun book kind of like Brutus. It was just going to be balls to the wall action and silliness. What comics really needs right now. But
yeah,
a couple hours after I had posted that opinion, we got a letter back saying that it wasn't picked up.
And you think it was because of the opinion?
No. I think it was just because it wasn't a fit. That was that particular pitch. Justin had sent it to them a couple of times before, but with different artists. You don't give up when you pitch something. You tweak it and try to make it better, and you send it again. So I don't think one had to do with the other. It was just timing.
All right. Now,
but yeah, they didn't want it, but somebody who works at Legendary Entertainment, they wanted us to send it to them. They were very interested in it.
Well, maybe you'll still hear back from that.
No, that's dead because Justin doesn't want to work with me anymore, and that's his right.
Okay,
that's his right. He's standing by his friend Mags.
It kind of reminds me, in no small way, of the American Civil War. I mean, brother against brother kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, it was a shame that the working relationship had to end, because I love his writing. Luther Strode is still one of my favorite comics of all time, but I can't fault him for wanting to distance himself from somebody who's part of Comicsgate. I mean, look what happened to pretty much everybody's career who agrees with Comicsgate.
Well, maybe eventually there'll be enough of them to form their own little company and move on from there. We won't have to do the IGGs anymore.
Maybe.
The IGGs have always been something that I've had some reservations about the what's the viability for a long-term kind of machine for Comicsgate. because, for publishing graphic novels, it's great because, Ethan can do Cyberfrog and there it is. And then he can go off and do Rainbow Brute. And that's a whole thing to itself. But you can't do something like, IGG Man #1, 22 pages at $22 a pop and say, okay, see me in 7 or 8 months for the next 22 pages of a floppy issue.
Yeah, it's a little difficult if you're gonna. It's very much not a monthly format kind of thing. I think the guys that are putting out the book, Something Real, they're trying to do an ongoing kind of thing. I don't know if that's monthly, so that might be a little bit different, but they're the closest that I can think of. But doing it monthly is possible, but very, very, very difficult because you would have to start the campaign 1 month, and then you would have to have a team helping you to get it out. It would have to be bi-monthly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the most you could do it because you can't run an Indiegogo campaign unless one is fulfilled. So you would have to have January, you fulfill it in the campaign ends and you start fulfilling it in February, and then you start another campaign in March. So bi-monthly is possible.
You'd almost have to campaign to start a company rather than to start a book.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if everybody's planning on doing something like that. I mean, I know that the big news when Jawbreakers was canceled from Antarctic was that, hey, we've formed a company and it's going to be published through Simon & Schuster, was the talk at the time that Splato comics would be distributed through them. I don't know if that's still the case. I haven't talked with Brett about that or Malin, but would be interesting to find out if this Jawbreakers graphic novel is going to have a secondary distribution still.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
What about Brutus the Badass? Are there any plans for secondary distribution outlet on that once the IGG has been fulfilled and delivered?
Not at the moment. Once we get all 3 books done, we'll probably pitch it to like someone's like Alterna or Antarctic Press or some places. Probably not Antarctic Press, given what they've done.
Yeah, well, I imagine Antarctic might be a little gun shy at the moment.
Yeah, but we'll push it around and try to have it come out as a maybe an 8 to 10 issue mini series.
Okay, now what is Brutus the Badass? Let's get into the meat of the story here. I mean, it looks very rockabilly. It looks very Simon Bisley. But what's going on in there?
Well, it is the story about a psychobilly bounty hunter, intergalactic bounty hunter, who has no memory of his past, but suddenly finds that his past is hunting him. He's now become the bounty hunted.
Okay.
And as we go through the series, we're going to unravel a little bit of his past.
So there'll be cliffhangers and such in each book to make people come back and want to fund the next book.
Yeah, there will be cliffhangers, but it's also going to be a self-contained book, so it's not going to be, this is issue 1, and then it ends right in the middle of the story, like to be continued, and you gotta wait 6 months for it to go on. Like each book will have its own story, and then we'll also pick up and build on it.
Okay, and how many books were you looking at?
We're going to be doing 3. The first one is 40. The first one is 60 pages. That's
a big book.
Yeah, that's with a 5-page backup story by Andrew Huerta. So the main story is 55 pages, and the second and third books are going to be. We haven't settled on a final page rate, but we're looking at around 72 pages.
Okay.
So they're definitely going to be thicker, and they're going to be a little bit cheaper too.
Now, has the first book been fulfilled? Is that a done deal out?
Not yet. We are scheduled for April.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm finishing up a couple of the pages, and those are going to go. All of them are going to go to the colorist. He's going to knock those out of the park. And then we're going to get everything going.
But it met its goal. That the campaign's over.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Excellent. I can't keep up with all of them. There's so many.
Yeah, we had it open for a couple of months. And then I made the dumb decision to close it out.
Now, yeah, because you probably could have pulled in a lot more money once Christmas got out of the way and New Year started.
Yeah, well, the reason we did it was that we were ahead of schedule. So I was like, okay, let's close it down. And then Ethan made this speech. Sorry, my family's in the background.
That's cool.
Ethan made this like speech that really hit me to the core, where he was like, I'm going to take my time and I'm going to make sure this is the best possible book that I can give somebody, because I want them to be able to pick it up in 10 years and still read a fun comic. I don't want it to be something that you just stick in a bag and put away and forget about it.
Right.
Like most comics.
And a lot of people are just figuring out the whole business of it. So, these estimates that we're getting, it's like, yeah, I'm going to start a campaign and I'll have the book out next month. And then, they find out, well, maybe not next month. Maybe it might take a little longer. But
yeah, it takes time. But because of that, I went back and I started redrawing some of the pages and touching up some of the panels to improve where I could. I would open the page to get ready to start, and I would go through the pages and say, how can I make this page better today? And then I would do that, and then I ended up getting delayed on my own personal deadline, which that was after the campaign was closed. But we're still doing good on getting our fulfillment date.
Good. Now, how much of this you're doing the art of this? You doing any of the writing, or is that all going to be?
It's co-written by Nasser Robati.
Okay.
You can find him on Twitter at Nasser Robati 13. It's all one word, 2 numbers.
So you're the guy who read his script.
Yep, I'm the one guy. He did a good job, though. He did a good job.
Well, good. I can't wait to read his stuff, because you keep hearing Kick Nasser, and he's kind of an endearing guy, but I want to see what he's got for output. So it'd be interesting to read what he's got. You had tweeted some stuff last week that definitely got my attention, and I wanted to find out where you had got it. And the reason I say that is because we here at Critical Blast were on the same thread and the same track, and suddenly you had the information. So it was you had talked about the fire bell.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just curious. I know that a friend of mine and I had been discussing this back and forth for about a month and tracking this down, because we had seen all the threads on it, and we had kind of parceled it out to a few people to get independent corroboration. Say, hey, look at this little part of it and come back to me and tell me what you think. And Edwin Boyette was one of those people, and he started posting articles about Firebell on Twitter. So I was thinking, okay, well, if Edwin's seeing sense in this, then it's a pretty good idea that pretty good chance that we're onto something. But where did you come up with it at?
I was just browsing around on a Kiwi farm, and I was looking. They have a Comicsgate thread on there.
Yeah.
And where they're just like talking about what's going on, and I saw somebody had posted that Kwanzaa worked at Weber Shandwick.
Yeah.
Huge PR firm. And then I started browsing around. Like, these people specialize in social media and activist campaigning. That's exactly what's going on. And he's one of the leading, I guess you could say, audience clappers.
Well, he's the creative director, yeah, and he's definitely.
Well, he's one of the big people in comics that are behind Renfremus and SJW Spider-Man, clapping at everything that they do, saying, "Yeah, good job," like a boss at a company.
Exactly. And I've been trying to put together some kind of a timeline on this, because it all seems to, everything in Comicsgate seems to always come back to this book.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why this book was so important. I read it. It's a good book. And it'll be, an icon and a milestone just for existing. Because, as was tweeted out by the sages, the good thing is that it's not being published, and that always hit me, because it was like, why is somebody thinking it's a good thing that a book is not being published, whether you like the author or not? You can say, well, the good thing is that he's not getting published by this company, or the good thing is that this company's not selling their hands with him. But to say that the good thing is that a book is not being published is so censorious to me as to be repugnant. And that's just, it's an unforgettable comment. But it was May 9th of 2018, Meyer had that contract with Antarctic Press to publish this book. And on May 11th, Mark Waid calls them, and Antarctic cancels it. And then we don't hear anything for June, July, August, and then at the end of September, there's a lawsuit against Mark Waid for tortious interference. And I had expected this. I had I'd seen the term being bandied about there, and as well as some of the group boycott stuff that was going on with the publisher, or not the publishers, the comic stores that said they weren't going to cover it. So we had actually talked to a law professor at Washington University in St. Louis who specialized in tortious interference, and we laid out all the steps of what a tortious interference case requires, and married that up to everything that had happened on Mark Waid's end and Antarctic Press's end. And it seems like, yes, it definitely fits the definition. The attorney, the law professor we talked to also thought that, and apparently so do Meyer's attorneys as they're bringing the suit. And it seemed like, okay, well, that's a $75,000 suit. We're just going to watch it. And that was going to be like the big event. And then October, within days, the 29th, Meyer files the suit. 4 days later, on the 2nd of October, Mark Waid is hired to Humanoids as the creative director. And I'm like, if a guy's being sued in the comic industry for something like this kind of interference, what company wants to bring him on new to them and take on that kind of potential poison? And then to see that shortly after he's bringing in Kwanzaa Johnson, and I say that because I can't pronounce the name that he writes under. I'm not trying to, mislast name him or anything. And also Max Visaggio, as well as a couple others. And then the very next month, both of those two people are filing DMCA charges against Meyer's YouTube channel. Like, it's just, there's way too much coincidental happenings with these same set of people all the time to not be coordinated. And
let's make a very important distinction here for a second, though.
Yeah,
it was announced that Mark Waid was going to be working for humanoids at that time, not that he was hired at that specific moment. So that is a deal.
He may have been hired earlier.
Yes, that is a deal that definitely had to be in the works for at least a month to get contracts back and forth and all that stuff. You don't just hire somebody 1 week and then announce it the next.
Sure.
Not in comics.
That makes sense. So I'm with you there. But then, to find that Fire Bell program, like you said, it's literally proprietary training to be performing guerrilla warfare in social media. And we know that they've done this before when when Michigan State had the Larry Nassar scandal. They were, out there muckraking on social media to get information on people who were involved in the lawsuit.
Yeah, it's been done before, so there's a precedent set.
And I guess the only thing I can't wrap my head around is why they would do it, and who would hire them to do it, because it's $75,000, which would bankrupt me, but Marvel and Disney would just write that off and get it done with. So I'm thinking that there's more to lose for them than just that chunk of change if they lose this lawsuit.
Definitely. This is a huge lawsuit. When Mark Waid loses, it it sets the example. It sets a precedent that there are consequences for the things that you do online in the comic book world.
Right.
And that is a huge deal. It tells these people that they can't just go around bullying people and getting their way, and there not being some kind of consequences. So it's very important.
Yeah, and the tactic, it's very singular, and the tactic is that they have to prove that Comicsgate is a hate group, not to hurt Ethan and not to hurt you and not to hurt anybody else, but if they can make that established that Comicsgate is a hate group, and then tie Richard C. Meyer to that, then that is something that they're going to bring up in the lawsuit to say that Mark Waid had reasonable action to tell Antarctic Press to avoid working with him.
I don't even know if that matters, really.
I don't think it does either, but I think that's still what they're thinking.
That's definitely what they're thinking. They're thinking that they're going to throw out the case because of how they've built his character. But what it comes down to is that Richard had a contract. Mark Waid, who was not involved in that, interfered with that contract and got it terminated. That's what it boils down to.
Exactly.
If even if it comes out that Zach is a money launderer for the mob, it still has nothing to do with that case. It's a matter of, did a third party interfere with two other parties?
Well, it's going to be an interesting case, and I know that I'm in Waco, Texas right now, and if I'm still here, which I'm hoping I'm not, but if I am still here, it's just a hop, skip, and a jump down to Austin, and I definitely plan on being in the, whatever they call it, the theater or whatever, the observation chairs for that case. I'd love to live tweet from that just to share with everybody what's going on in real time when it happens. I'm trying to look up something here in the tortious interference article that I had done, because now that we've actually got other graphic novelists involved with the DMCA's against Richard's channel, it throws another wrinkle into things that not very many people have been considering, largely because the suit's already been filed. And I don't think he's going to change it any. My search just takes a little bit to work out here, especially since I'm on a slower machine. Yeah, this microphone problem we had at the beginning here, if I don't have the microphone plugged in when it boots up, then it doesn't see it. If I plug it in afterwards, it's not going to work.
It's weird.
Yeah, it's an old Acer machine. I think its laptop's 5 years old. Okay, there we are. Adversity in comics, a civil war brews among creators. And it will pull up here in a second. But basically, well, apparently I'm not going to be able to get the thing to come up. I don't know why that is. If there were more than one graphic novelist working together to prevent the publication of Jawbreakers, which means if Kwanzaa or Mags or any other person out there had called Antarctic, and we don't know if anybody else called Antarctic. We don't know if anybody was talking with Mark Waid, encouraging him to call Antarctic, although he said people were encouraging him. Then it becomes more than just the tortious interference. Then you actually do have something a little bit larger. I want to quote it correctly here, so I'm not going to try and come up with
a much larger problem, though.
Yeah, it's well, I talked with him. Quit scrolling. God damn it! I hate having an ancient computer. 5 years old is ancient.
Especially in technology terms.
I know, especially on hotel Wi-Fi too.
Somebody on this side of things doesn't want to go to bed.
Oh, yeah, I've got an 11-year-old, and it's hard with him too. Okay, so John N. Droback is Washington University's professor of economics, and he's talking about the group boycott of the stores. And he said it's likely a legal boycott. He said if the stores are agreeing among themselves not to distribute Meyer's graphic novel, that's a boycott of his by all comic stores, which are competitors. So it is a group boycott, which are generally legal unless they're directed at a competitor, and he's not a competitor. He says if other writers of graphic novels got together and they got retailers not to sell this guy's graphic novel, that would probably be per se illegal. So we know that one graphic novel writer was coordinating this.
Yeah, one was definitely in on it.
Yeah. So if anybody else was involved, he says, my guess is that there are other ways to get the graphic novel, probably over the internet. Yes, there was. That's how we got it. And there are plenty of other graphic novels out there, so customers are not hurt that much. If anything, this is a business tort. Boom. He says you need an agreement between competitors. If two graphic novel writers got together and then pressured the publisher not to pressure jawbreakers, you got a much better chance at an antitrust violation. And that's his whole, pretty much what he teaches at Washington University to people who are going to be lawyers. So Discovery is going to be interesting on this. I'd love to, hear Nick Rekieta talk about that.
Yeah, I'm waiting for his big video. He said he was going to be doing one on an update on the case.
I had heard something that somebody heard that somebody else said that there was an offer to settle it for $75,000 to charity. I haven't heard anything specific on that. And I certainly hope that Richard doesn't take that, but I can see that as being an offer since they've seen him donate to charity on his own to, hush people and their criticisms. When he donated $10,000, said, okay, look, I'm sorry I said something bad to you. Here's $10,000 to a charity for, suicidal transgender children.
Yeah, and then she went on. They made an effort to try to get that donation canceled. They went and they badmouthed him to the actual charity to try to get them to not accept it.
Yeah, well, apparently they did accept it, so good for them.
Yeah, I mean, who would want to turn down $10,000? That would be crazy.
So I want to talk more about what your plans are for publication. Do you have any works other than Brutus at the moment that you're looking at doing, or how much are you going to expand into this IGG and Comicsgate publishing?
Well, for me, Indiegogo is where it's at. That's where I'm going to be doing everything from now on. Once I put the books out through Indiegogo and they're done, I will pitch them to publishers to try to get them into comic stores for people, like break them up into a little mini series. So that's why all my books are going to be like, the 72 pages for the other Brutus books, things like that. Because why leave money on the table?
Sure. Are you going to approach somebody who's already existing publishing to get those things to the comic stores? Are you going to try to do your own distribution?
Definitely not going to do my own. That's not something that I ever want to do. It's like I'm not much of a businessman. I would much rather just get my work done, get a paycheck, do my taxes for being a self-employed creator. But as far as the fulfilling part is something I want to do to get the experience. But if I can have somebody else put these books in folders and send them out, hey, by all means.
Yeah,
and if that means diamond, hey.
Well, they're pretty much the only game in town. And I think if anybody who's doing comics has learned anything from watching Zach, it's that you can't distribute it yourself, and you can't find anybody else to do it right either. So
oh, he's having so many problems.
Well, I told him, my copy arrived just fine.
Yeah, mine did too. Thankfully, but some people, they got theirs and it was raining, so it got a little wet because of the cardboard mailers. But I watched a video that he did recently. That's on the company. That's not on him.
Yeah, yeah,
The
and
people
I
that
think
they
he probably,
hired.
I think he over, I think he over worries about things. I see him as being very strongly a perfectionist when it comes to things, and he takes a lot of crap for that from uh, people inside and outside of Comicsgate.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But there's also the pressure that this, everything has to go on unhinged.
Yeah, well, because everything that goes slightly wrong is going to be ridiculed and mocked and magnified by anybody doesn't who has an interest in seeing this effort not succeed.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I mean, I don't know what Richard's doing next, because I think the next big thing we're looking for is well, there's obviously Cyber Frog, Brutus the Badass, and Red Rooster. Those are the three, and Little Girl Lethal, I guess. Those are the big four that I'm looking at.
Bigfoot Bill, that's going to be coming out soon.
Right, right.
Graveyard Shift from John Malin. That's coming out soon. As far as Zach, I know he's got another one that he's lining up, but he wants to make sure that the book is finished before he does the campaign, so that once the campaign is over and he has the money, it's like boom, off to the printers. It'll be here in 2 months.
That's a much better plan, because the longer people have to wait, the more seeds of doubt can definitely be planted. We got chats here from Luis Jaramillo. Says, "Yo, Donal, see if Comixology will publish it online." And yes, Bjorn, Sovereign. I keep hearing about Sovereign, so that's a good one too. That we.
Oh yeah. My boy Andrew Hort to Sovereign.
Now, Sovereign's another one. I've got questions about that, but I'm guessing that he's already taken care of that, because there was already a book called Sovereign, published by somebody else.
Yeah, I saw that pointed out in Image. It was a book that came out through Image, I think.
Right.
Years ago.
They released the trademark on it, or they're just not pursuing it?
I don't think they can pursue it. I mean, because it's just a word. It's not a made up word, so you can't really copyright something like that, can you?
You can, and in fact, do you remember when Image, in its early days, had a hero called Wildstar?
Yeah.
And do you know why Wildstar is not being published anymore?
No.
Well, it's because there was a guy who had an independent comic book series, and it was a series of graphic novels called Wild Stars, and he had the registered trademark on that for a title of a book. So nobody else could have that title, and Wild Star was too close to it. It was determined in court.
But the thing about that is that's a made up word. I mean, that's like two words connected together. It's not a word that's in the dictionary, like Stardust. Nasa Robati did a book Stardust, and Neil Gaiman did one called Stardust. There's several novels out called Stardust. There's a music album called Stardust. So it's like,
because you can't copyright a title. You can't copyright a title, but if you want to have trade dress, then you can trademark the title and the logo, which is why we have to have Shazam instead of Captain Marvel.
Yeah. Well, with Marvel, they copyrighted the word Marvel somehow. But I mean, it's something that definitely I would love to hear a copyright lawyer talk about, because I mean, sovereign is a word in the dictionary, like front. It's got a definition. Critical. It's got a definition. Can you copyright something like that? Can you copyright a word that's used in the English language?
Yeah, it's a fine definition. You can't copyright it, but you can trademark it. So if you wanted to have that word appear on T-shirts and hats, and it be your word, like what was it? That's hot. I think that was something that Paris Hilton was always saying all the time, and it became associated with her. And I believe she tried to trademark that so that she could put it on things. I don't know if I know there's other instances where people have had phrases, definitely made up words. Well, Super Bowl. You can't talk about the Super Bowl in an advertisement. You have to talk about the big game, even though Super and Bowl, everybody knows what you're talking about. You're talking about that football game.
Mm-hmm.
But you can say it's not a copyrighted phrase. It's just a trademarked phrase. And I guess the difference is, if you're going to label something like a book logo, and definitely if you're going to have the little circle with an R next to it, showing that it's been registered. But it would definitely be fun to see Nick Relocate take that up and talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, his friend is a copyright lawyer. That'd be something that I would definitely be interested in watching.
I had used to read Bill Ingersoll when he was published in the Comics Buyer's Guide, and again, I did an article years and years ago that went over all of this. As far as why Marvel can have a Sandman and DC can have a Sandman, well, it's because Marvel's Sandman didn't have his own book and competing title, and they've both been around for so long. And I remember asking him, I said, so could DC open up a book called Arachnid Tales and have a character in it called the Spider-Man that wasn't listed as a book logo? And he's like, well, they'd probably be courting a lawsuit, but legally, yeah, you could do it. So it's
interesting.
It's very interesting, and I wouldn't want to start a character called Spider-Man. Marvel has enough of those as it is already.
Can you make a character called Spider-Man without the hyphen?
You probably could.
But yeah, like you said, I wouldn't want to do it.
I wouldn't want to do it, no. But there's so many Sandmans running around. I'm sure there's DC has a Sabretooth. We haven't seen him in a long time, but he was a Flash villain.
Oh, didn't know that.
Yeah, so there are instances where they own characters of the of same names. I don't know why they finally quit calling Shazam Captain Marvel, and just went with Shazam. The whole point was you say the word, you change. It was a freaking story plot point for so many times. He'd say the word and not mean to and change. And now it's like, oh yeah, my name's Shazam. If I say it as my name, I'm okay. If I say it to change on purpose, then I'm going to use magic. Okay, you took the kind of fun little twist things out of it, but that was the 60s and 70s. Well, you know what? It's been almost an hour here, and I don't want to keep you on all night. You got family and things to take care of, and you got a book to get out, man. So
has it been an hour? Huh.
It's been, well, close to an hour. We did get a late start. I've got to do the work thing in the morning, so this isn't like I can do a Saturday live stream with everybody and just stay on until all hours.
Gotcha.
But for people who are going to watch, I'll stand up once more and say, yes, ask me about my Comicsgate agenda. If you're looking for that shirt, it is in the Critical Blast TeePublic store. I'll put the links in the description here. I had them there earlier, and then, of course, we had to reboot. Although I think they're still there. I think it was just a hangout that had to reboot. Shilling for a little bit here. Critical Blast is trying to raise some money for our relocation. So if you are interested in reading urban fantasy, we have Gods and Services, our first anthology, which we published 3 months ago. It's available on Amazon in paperback and in Kindle. So if you want to read that, you can follow the link in the description. We also have the TeePublic store. And of course, just to fill in any necessary stopgaps, as it became evident we weren't going to make our goal, we do have the GoFundMe link out there. So if you feel obliged to, you don't want to read something, you don't want to wear anything, you just want to walk around illiterate and naked, just throw some money into the GoFundMe. We'll take it.
Walk around illiterate and naked.
Yeah. And as a special hint, if you do follow the Amazon link and decide not to buy the book, go look around Amazon for stuff you do want, because as long as you came in through that link, we referred you, and it'll still help us out. Donal, what's going on here with Brutus that we haven't talked about that you want to make sure that people know about?
There's not much that people don't already know. I mean, I talk about it a lot on when I'm streaming, and I'm pretty open on Twitter about what's going on, what pages I'm working on. I'm getting pretty close to sending all the pages off to the colorist to get him going.
So you're going to send them all off at once, or you haven't been sending them off like as each one gets finished?
No, because he still takes gigs in the industry to keep work done, and because I can only work like 3 days a week. My pages, they take a while to get done, so I didn't want to send him like 5 pages one week and then he have to wait two weeks for another 5 pages, you know. So I just told him, go ahead and keep doing what you got to do, and don't worry about starting on the pages. I'll just keep sending them to you. Once you get them all and I say go, then it's on from there.
Yeah, I think they'll have a more consistent look that way too, because you know, if you color 3 pages and then you wait 6 months or whatever, I'm just making up a number, and then you color 2 more, well, your style is going to vary a little bit more by that point. You'll be able to tell where the delineations were in the breaks when you got the pages.
Yeah. Plus, it lets me go back and see if there's anything that I missed drawing. Like, did I put all of the patches on Brutus's jacket? I can go back and edit myself and make sure to make those little final tweaks so that everything is there, so that when he gets them, it's spot on, and it's not like, oh, I got to go back and change this because Nasser pointed out something.
So once again, when are we going to expect to see estimated Brutus is in our hands?
April.
That's close.
Yeah,
that's
getting pretty close.
You're still inking, man. So you better have some smoke coming out of the end of that now.
I'm busting my ass to get all these pages done. But I mean, we're gonna be tight, but we're gonna hit it.
Well, it's going to be one of the big successes of Comicsgate this year. I think Comicsgate 2018 was the birth of Comicsgate. 2019 is going to be when Comic Steps starts taking its baby steps and running around the living room and getting into trouble. So yep. It's going to be fun to watch this thing grow and become the new being in comic book publishing. It reminds me, and I'll say this closing out here, I've been around a long time in comics, and it reminds me of the attitude people had toward Image when they first came out. Yep. And this whole, you know, oh, it's going to be creator owned. Okay, well, that's going to be great because they don't have any editors. All they got's a bunch of writers, and they're not very good, but they've got some great artists. So look, you know, enjoy the pinup books because that's what you're going to have. And you know, for a while they were right, because a lot of the Image books were, you know, you had great big panels of pretty looking art, and the stories they were interesting, they were different, but you know, they hadn't found their stride yet. And
yeah, it's like they worked Marvel style. They were just like, okay, here's a plot that would probably fit in a tweet. I'm gonna draw this, and then they would just have to try to stretch that into 24 pages, and so, you know, you get 3 panels that are just, you know, huge, and the artists would just go and do what they did. Some of them ended up hiring some decent writers. Brandon Choi at Wildstorm.
Yeah.
Eric Stevenson ended up going on at Extreme Studios as a dialogue man.
And you know, now Image is
now the action is gone and it's all talking heads.
Yeah, it is.
Completely reversed.
I the last Image book I read, I read the last Savage Dragon book that had come out, and I didn't keep it. I had ended up having to rip it up, not as any kind of a statement, but because I do have an 11-year-old boy who's going to get all of my comics when I pass along to him, and I didn't want him reading that one, so I made sure I shredded that sucker. I mean, you know, this was
was it the Squiddly Splorch one?
It was the one where and the reason I picked it up was because it had Captain Tootsie on the cover, and I look at Captain Tootsie and I'm like, that's the laughing man that Ethan uses for his icon. And I just wanted to pick it up and see if there was anything, you know, where they were trying to, you know, dig at him or anything. And other than the appearance of the character, I didn't see anything like that. But, you know, Savage Dragon, I don't know if it's Savage Dragon Jr. now, because apparently it's not the same guy I was reading. He's married to what's ostensibly a 12-year-old, and their next door neighbor has threesomes with them, and it's just all okay.
Yeah. That book was only good in the 90s.
Well, a lot of Image was only good in the 90s.
Yeah,
So, and
that's true.
the 90s are, well, the 90s are back again. That's
Yeah,
the kind of the point
heck
that
yeah.
drove it. Now, that's just showing Richard's age compared to mine. I'm sitting here saying, hey, do we got to go back to the 90s? Can we go back to the 70s, please? Because, the 70s, when you had 22 pages of a story and you had then a backup story and they finished both of them in the same book. You came back next month, you got a totally new story.
Hey, that's not a bad plan.
It's not. I mean, the subplot change of a Superman story was that, Clark Kent quit being a reporter for the Daily Planet and became a television anchor. And I was like, well, that's a huge change. That just changed the world. No, it didn't. He just had more problems getting out to do Superman stuff.
Yeah.
You just changed the setting from book to book and you met new characters, but every issue was still beginning, end, beginning, end. Sometimes a two-parter, but there is not a single story in the 70s. I was going to say there may not be. I'm going to go ahead and just say there was not a single story in the 70s that required you to come back 6 months worth of comics to get a whole story out of it. It just wasn't a thing. There was no way that Julius Schwartz or Dick Giordano were going to allow that to happen.
Yeah, the writing for the trade trend really really kind of killed the Dunham ones.
Yeah, and it's
unfortunately.
Well, it happened in the 90s, and this was another article I gave myself to do about 3 or 4 years ago, and it was an insane idea. But I went through my long boxes and I dug out issues of Justice League, runs of Justice League that were 12 straight issues long. And I said, okay, here's some from the 60s, here's some from the 70s, and for every decade I took 12, and then I sat down and I counted the pages, and then I went back and I counted the panels. And then I went back and I counted the words in each book. So, that was mind numbing. And in the process, I also counted complete stories. Where did this story begin? Where did it end? And you can see in the 90s, there's this sudden spike, and I accounted for inflation of the cover price and everything. And suddenly there's this spike in price of the 90s for what you're paying on a per word or a per panel or a per page basis. And it spiked on all three metrics. And the number of stories you got dropped. So you were, it sounds very boomer to say, gosh, we're paying a lot for comic books these days. But even on a adjusted for inflation average, what you're paying for what you're getting is so much. I sound like Tug now. You're paying way more than you should be paying for what you're getting in return.
Oh yeah, I mean that's not a boomer thing. I mean, I very much agree. I started reading comics. Excuse me. I started very intensely in the 90s. I was casual just before Image started. I was just getting into it, and then when Image started, I was like gung ho into it all. And you could see the prices rise and rise and rise and rise, and the page count did not. Eventually, the page count started going down. But we're paying a lot more for a lot less quality now.
Yeah, well, the paper quality supposedly went up, but from what I understood, the paper was being subsidized anyway. So, see, the thing that got me into comics was where I grew up, which was Sparta, Illinois. And if you know anything about comic book history, Sparta, Illinois was the home of World Color Press. In the 70s, every comic book in the world was printed in this small Southern Illinois town. I mean, that was the industry that employed the population. And there wasn't a comic shop around. There wasn't even a store that sold comics within 50 miles of the place because there was no need to. People who worked there were just bringing home stacks of the stuff, and they'd put them in their yard sales, or they'd read them themselves, and it was getting thrown out. It was all the excess print, overprint. And that's how I was getting comics. Was I'd go to these yard sales, and here'd be people with just stacks of Rima and Superman and Batman and Detective, and barbershop would have stuff. I'd go in there, read them in my barbershop, and ask him if I could take this Superman comic book home because it was Batgirl had fallen out of a helicopter, and I didn't know if he was going to reach her in time or not, and I had to finish it at home. And that's how I got into them. It was just availability.
That's definitely something that changed, the availability of comics.
Yeah, they're not everywhere anymore, and I think Walmart's trying to get into that and change that, but I don't know that putting comic books in Walmart and then selling them for close to $8 a piece is going to be the fix there. I think Alterna's got the right mindset.
Oh yeah,
Get back to that newsprint. Get back to printing them cheap. Get back to printing stories that can finish in 2 issues or 3 issues. Start doing anthologies again. I mean, I think somebody would kill it if they could reproduce what DC was doing. And I guess you can probably tell I was a DC kid. If they could reproduce what DC was doing with House of Mystery, House of Secrets, Unexpected, Ghosts, you'd pick up one of those. You'd have 4 stories in the damn thing, and it would take you half an hour to read it or longer.
If somebody could, but who's that going to be?
I don't know. It's we need to get back to the roots of comics.
Yeah, I agree.
And maybe
Alterna's doing a good job with their newsprint. I think they would do an even better job if they would start taking on superhero properties.
I agree. I think they probably don't, because it's still Peter. It's a one-man operation, and he's almost literally dodging bullets these days. So
that's so fun.
I know
it pisses me off so much. It pisses me off.
And I sincerely hope they catch whoever did that. And I don't
in prison.
Yeah, definitely make an example. And I don't even want to say whose side this person could be on, because it could be either side. It's it could be somebody just having enough of this whole he's a white supremacist guy, or it could be somebody who thinks that they're on the CG side and think, oh well, we'll just send out a false flag and make it look like they did it, because nuts exist, and they exist in everybody's group. So
that's true, but I definitely don't. I personally don't think it was anybody in Comicsgate.
I hope it wasn't. I've just seen too many things where it looks like somebody from one group should have done it, and it ends up being the guy from the other group who thought he was helping things out, and he was just a nut. But it's a little profane, but I've said it before, and I keep saying it. Every healthy, functioning body has an asshole, and I'm sure Comicsgate is going to have theirs, and they're the ones who get all the attention from all the wrong people. But I think there's enough good stuff coming out from it that it's going to overshadow that. Eventually, people are going to see that yeah, okay, that guy over there, he did something stupid. The rest of these guys over here are actually putting out good comics, so he's an outlier. Let's focus on what's coming out, because I want to read some comics.
Yeah, any like you said, any group of individuals is going to have one or two outliers, 1 or 2 assholes, people that just go off on their own and have no manners.
Yeah. All right. Well, I said 10 minutes ago I was going to let you go, and we continued talking. No, I'm just really getting the hang of doing these live streams now. So at first I was like, okay, well, let's bring all the Toastmasters experience to bear on here. Let's have some bullet points out. Let's make sure we don't have any ums or ahs. And then I just started listening to a lot of the other live streams. I'm like, well, we're just kind of sitting around talking about comics. And as long as we got a main topic and some, current events going on here, it seems to be working for people. So I'm trying to bring my expertise and experience into it, and just chat with you guys and find out what's going on in comics. And I'm learning it as we go along.
Cool.
All right. Well, Donal, thank you so much for taking some time to talk with us.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me on, man. I really appreciate it.
And we will definitely follow you on Twitter. We're going to look for Brutus the Badass in April, and maybe we'll be able to get a review out on that on criticalblast.com.
Awesome.
Thanks, Donal.
Thanks.